Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit, my loves. Take what resonates with you, leave the rest. So it's really interesting because when I started tuning in this week, the very first thing that I got was this heightened sense of fear. And it's really interesting to me how this time of Halloween, this time when the veil is thin, is also a time where there's heightened fear. It's almost like fear of the divine, fear of the spirit world. It's like as old as time. And that makes me really sad. Even in the ancient times, well, I don't know about ancient times, but like trick or treat, if you don't give them a treat, then some ghost thing, spooky creature is going to come into your house. The witches' holiday, the witches' new year, and this sacred time of year is always so tied up with fear. And it feels like fear overall is turned up right now, not just about Halloween, not just about, fear of the spirit world, but fear for our future, fear for where we're going, fear for where we're going as a collective. And I feel a lot of crown chakra blocks right now, a lot of overthinking, a lot of rumination, a lot of just going down dark pathways in our mind and sort of spiraling and co-creating. And I think one of the first messages is just about our relationship to fear overall, because fear is a messenger. It's trying to keep us safe. And with this time of year, with Scorpio season, it is a heightened time for shadow work, for stepping into our power, for reclaiming our power. So it's this time where we're worried, where we're really projecting into the future, where we're extra wondering what's going to happen. And I just feel like the tie between fear and the spirit world is so heightened and in our face this time of year. And I don't think it's any accident that those two are energetically linked. And I think it's purposeful. My wish is that we can turn from fear of the unknown to fully jumping headfirst into it and trusting it and celebrating the love that exists within it. So it's interesting because when I was tuning into the messages this week, I've been getting this message many weeks in a row of a pathway, and that basically we can't see too far down the path, that we have to stay on this one immediate step and just stay in the present moment and then take the next step. But what they're showing me this week is the path vanishing. It's no longer even a pathway. It's a marker on the life map that is a rebirth moment. And so the path vanished and the womb space took its place. So it feels like this week is a very powerful moment for rebirth. And now that I actually reflect on that, that makes a lot of sense with what we were talking about with the witch's new year. But this is an important marker on our map of rebirth, of creation, and of making new energetic choices. And so the message that I'm getting is that the way to move forward right now is not tied to potential, is not even tied to long-term goals. It's tied to what our heart asks for here and now. Because when we try to walk the path from a place of attachment to outcome and wanting something to happen so desperately or trying to hit a goal, etc., we can sometimes be out of alignment with our higher self, and our higher self follows what our heart asks of us. But if we can live in alignment with what our heart is asking for us here and now, that will then sort of readjust timelines, and there will be a domino effect of energy and everything will start to change. So if you're sort of putting up with something that you know isn't good for you because you hope that it changes, they're showing me that's not the energetic highest choice at this moment. This moment really is a rebirth moment to cut cords with what we no longer accept in our life, what we want more of our life. I hope that when you do the divination practices from the episode, you can get more clearly on what this rebirth moment means to you. And so if you're kind of spinning out in your head, like, what does this mean about my future? Where am I going? What's going to happen 5 years from now? It's like all of that does not feel like the best use of our energy. The best use of our energy feels like what is in our power here and now. And I hope I'm communicating this correctly because it's not even the path, like I'm saying. It's not even about where we're going. It's literally about here and now, this rebirth moment, shedding an outdated story of self so that our true self can emerge in a way that then allows everything else to shift. So it's like not trying to walk anywhere, not trying to create something, not trying to go somewhere, but instead focusing on the shedding of old skin so that you will attract what is in your highest good. So it's a really powerful moment, and they just don't want you to get caught up in the big picture right now. It feels like they really want you to focus on the micro of what's in your control here and now. I also felt like around this time, it's such a push pull between fear and constriction. And it's so interesting because I was giving a reading the other day and I was feeling into somebody who was so afraid of spirit. And when I tapped into her energy, it was like this visceral, panicking, fight or flight feeling. And I feel like Halloween with scary movies and costumes and trick or treating, it's like really, it's a fun time. And I know it's not like that serious. And I'm just being extra sensitive because I love the spirit world so much. But there also are so many subconscious programs about possession and demons and scary things and hell, all of these dark things that co-create with our witch wound and co-create with our fear of spirit. And it manifests, unfortunately, as a disconnection from our birthright of intuitive reclamation when listened to. And right now is a time, like I started with, where this fear is really turned up. And that same voice of fear tries to make us feel constricted, tries to make us feel like we have limitations. Like as I feel into this, it's like that voice of fear is trying to take away our options, make us feel small, make us feel like there isn't anything better than we could plan for ourselves. But then conversely, I feel this other force, which is love, which is our angels, which is our higher self, which is our power, which is the new version of self that wants to emerge. And I just see this like whole line of angels walking with us. And I feel like there's this message here of this is a breaking point. That part of the rebirth moment is saying F fear. I'm going to make this choice right now. I'm going to shed a layer. I'm going to say no to something that isn't working. I'm going to let myself be vulnerable. I'm going to let myself try my best. Whatever it is that you've been avoiding, this is this moment of just leaning fully into love, even if the path is scary, even if it feels unknown. It's not even about where you're going right now. It's about doing the best with where you are and co-creating with that force of love, because this also feels like a moment where there's incredible potential for magic. It feels like a time where you're going to be in this in between. Like there might be some important decisions. There might be things that are kind of half right, but not quite, that you're wondering if you should settle for or not. And it just feels like it's this boss moment. It's this moment to get clear on your morals, your values, your desires, your authentic self, and to really do a checklist of here and now if your life is matching up with that. So it feels very powerful, very layered. It feels like the old and the new paradigms are in a tug of war for dominance on the macro and the micro. And that it's really important for us on the micro to stay in our power, to stay in our presence, and to really no longer co-create with what isn't working for us, and to throw away the idea of the path this week and focus on the rebirth moment right here, right now, and the important decision making and what's coming with us and what is not. I also got a really interesting message from our angels about science. And they were saying science is starting to catch up with magic faster. And if you've listened to, I believe it's episode 105 with Jessica Gill, I love that episode. Go back and listen if you haven't yet. We talked about how magic and science are just different sides of the same coin, and how I like to approach this work with a very grounded, practical, evidential based mindset. And they were saying that like more and more scientific and government agencies are going to start to tap in and remember and utilize spiritual gifts, consciousness, and that spirit is working with humanity in such a big way to evolve our consciousness to help us, and that we might start seeing science maybe talking more about auras or science talking more about past loved ones. I don't know how it's going to manifest, but science is starting to catch up with magic, which I think is really beautiful, because I think that's going to be a process that helps heal the witch wound and helps give credibility to what people on the spiritual path have been saying for a long time. So that message made me really excited. The other message that I got about this rebirth moment is that part of the reason the pathway is disappearing is because it's a moment where we have to check in with ourselves to make sure if this path even still resonates with us. Because we're in this moment where many new paths might start emerging and where we might have to make some new decisions. And it's like this check-in point. Like, do you even want to be on this path? Do you still believe what you're fighting for? Do you still resonate with this job, relationship, location, story that you've been telling yourself for a long time? So if the path is feeling a little bit clunky or difficult, it's almost this moment that's pumping the brakes intentionally so that you can reflect and make sure that it's still in alignment with what you see for yourself and what resonates with your heart. It's just an important time. Our choices right now are so important, and the opportunity to step into a new version of self is so powerful too. So I really hope I'm doing an okay job communicating this, because as it comes through to me, there's such big topics and it's so intense that it's sometimes hard for me to find the language to adequately articulate that. So we did have a past loved one in spirit come through today. This was an older gentleman, a grandfather on the mother's side of the family. And I did feel something like Parkinson's. I believe he had Parkinson's, and something that left him sort of out of control of his own body and really dependent on other people to care for him. And I also got this feeling with him that he would have had a really hard time speaking, especially in the last 6 months of his life. It feels like he couldn't talk, he couldn't articulate himself, and that feels very difficult. I also got that he was really attached to his mustache, and that his mustache was really important to him, and that he had a thank you for someone who groomed him and kept his mustache good for him when he couldn't take care of himself. I was also sensing a J name that could be his name, his first or last. And then I also felt like he was with his wife in spirit, and I felt like this man's personality was sort of watchful and quiet, and he just enjoyed being around family, but in no way was he the center of attention or the loudest person in the room. I also feel like there's a current woman in his family with cancer that he's talking about, somebody who's here living, battling cancer, and he's like basically telling me to say that he's with her and he's holding her hand and he's helping her from the other side with that battle, because he feels like he couldn't be present for her in the way he wanted to because of his battle with Parkinson's. And so now that he's on the other side, he can be there for her in a different way than he could while she was here for him. So there's a message that came in from him that was so beautiful. And to put it into words, he was basically saying that at the end of his life, he couldn't talk, but that he communicated to his loved ones that visited him through his eyes, through the love in his eyes. And there's this beautiful sentiment for the collective as well, that there's not a big difference between how your loved one who is nonverbal communicates through sending you love, through their eyes, through maybe a quick, tap on the shoulder or squeeze of the hand to let you know that they appreciate you, and how the spirit world communicates with you. It's like once you go nonverbal, once you're not in control of your body anymore, and you can only communicate through that exuding of love to your loved ones and hope that they know and hope that they understand. There's something similar here with how people in the spirit world, it's like the same exact language of love. It's a nonverbal language of love, and they communicate through maybe squeezing your hand or playing with your hair or sending you signs or sending you people that look like them or bringing up a memory of a photo of them on your phone. It's like they're finding creative ways so that I love you. And that when they are sending you those things, they want you to know, thank you, I love you. And they can't say it. They can't say it in words, I should say. And so it was just really beautiful because he basically said that he learned the language of nonverbal love at the end of his life, and that that's the language that continues on the other side. And I found that so beautiful. And especially like he just had these really beautiful brown eyes as I'm tapping into him, and they seem so soulful and expressive. And I feel like there's just such a beautiful connection about how much we can say without our words, with just a feeling, a look, a knowing, a gesture, a touch. And so, the language of spirit is not overly complicated. It's simple and it's a language of love. And so I love that this grandfather energy came in to remind us of that. And I really hope that it finds who it needs to. This is also, of course, for the collective, that our ancestors in spirit are speaking a language of love, and the littlest things for a language of love go a long way. And there's also a message from this grandfather of wishing and being frustrated that he couldn't speak the way he wanted to at the end. But there's also something here of like hoping that you know how grateful he was for the help, for the love, for the company, how the family was with him at the end. And so if you have loved ones who are in a hospice situation or who are nonverbal or who don't fully have control of their body, they're still speaking a language of love to you, and you've learned that language. This is just that language in a new form. And I think if you can think about it that way, it might help you have breakthroughs in your connection with your loved ones on the other side. So that's the message today. Honor your ancestors, speak that language of love to them, and they speak it back. It's sort of like if a loved one here is in a hospice situation and we don't know if we can feel them or we can see them. That's not so different than what we're doing on the other side. It's like these shows of love and these shows of faith, this show of family connection that we are sending into the spirit world. And people on the other side will say, I heard you. I heard you. And I'm so grateful for everything you did when you didn't know if I could hear you or not. And it's almost like these sort of end of life transitionary times are teaching us the exact lessons that we need to transition our relationship. It's like when our past loved one passes, that version of self that we were passes with them too, and we transition to a new way and a new relationship with them. So I really love how this is coming full circle to the lessons that we get when our past loved ones are nonverbal or we're not sure if they can even hear us. And that it's a very similar principle to how it is when they're on the other side. And that same show of faith and love and connection, whether or not you can see or hear them, just knowing that they can see and hear you and that they love you and that it means the world. So this Samhain, if you do little things to honor your ancestors, anything that feels good for you, just know in the same way that you holding their hand at the end when you weren't sure if they knew, it's the same thing. They know, they feel it, they love you, and they will give you the language of love in whatever way they can to communicate that they are still with you. So I hope that you have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your week, my loves. This is a big energetic moment. Just release fear of the future, stay present, make decisions based off of who you are now, really create energetic strategies that resonate with who you are now, because this is a really important moment in our timeline. And I just really can't stress enough that fear will try to make you feel limited or constricted, and that that's part of what we're releasing and shedding as well. Because what they were showing me is like the reason that the path started to disappear is that was becoming too fear-based, based on outcomes, based on ego, and that it's really time for a deep dive check-in with our soul and our heart, and to make sure that we're in alignment with what we truly deserve. So have a beautiful week, my loves, and I will catch you next time. Much love.